On a quiet street in a forgotten strip mall, a building stands dark and empty, its windows papered over from the inside. Once, the sign above the door glowed a distinctive blue and yellow, and cars filled the lot on a Friday night. Now the paint is faded, the parking spaces are cracked, and weeds push through the asphalt. For an entire generation, this was the shape of the weekend, the place you went when you wanted a movie in your hands. It was one of the most recognizable retail brands on Earth, with thousands of locations spread across the globe. And then, almost overnight, it was gone. This is the story of a company that dominated an industry so completely that its name became a verb for renting a film. It is the story of how the future arrived quietly, offered itself for sale, and was politely turned away. The story begins in the mid-1980s when a Texas entrepreneur named David Cook saw an opportunity in a chaotic new business. Home video rental was exploding as VCRs spread into living rooms across America, but the stores serving that demand were often small, cluttered, and disorganized. Cook imagined something different. A large, brightly lit store, clean and family-friendly, with a vast selection organized like a library. The first Blockbuster opened in Dallas in 1985, and it felt less like a corner shop than a supermarket for movies. Computerized checkout tracked inventory and rentals, a genuine novelty at the time. Customers could wander wide aisles lined with hundreds of titles, browsing by genre under bright fluorescent light. The concept was an immediate hit, and it hinted at something powerful, that the rental of movies could be turned into a scalable, systematized, national enterprise rather than a scattering of independent shops. The idea was strong, but the rocket fuel came from ambition and capital. In the late 1980s, a group of investors led by a waste management magnate named Wayne Huizenga took control of the young company and set out to grow it at a staggering pace. Huizenga understood one thing better than almost anyone: how to expand a chain quickly by rolling up smaller operators and opening new locations relentlessly. Under his direction, Blockbuster went on a buying and building spree, absorbing regional rental chains and planting new stores in market after market. For a stretch, it seemed a new Blockbuster was opening somewhere in the world every day. The company standardized everything: the layout, the signage, the blue and yellow color scheme, so that a store in one state felt identical to one thousands of miles away. In just a few years, a single Dallas shop had become a fast-growing national machine. By the 1990s, Blockbuster had become a genuine cultural institution. Renting a movie was a ritual, and the store was its temple. On a Friday evening, the place buzzed. Families debating titles, couples circling the new release wall, kids darting toward the games and candy near the register. There was a particular anticipation to it: the plastic clamshell cases, the promise printed on the membership card, the smell of popcorn and carpet. The chain expanded well beyond American borders, reaching into Europe, Latin America, Asia, and beyond, until it operated thousands of stores worldwide. It became so ubiquitous that its brand felt permanent, woven into the fabric of ordinary life. Going to Blockbuster wasn't just a transaction. It was an evening's plan, a small adventure with a physical object as its reward. Few companies ever achieve that kind of reach, where the act of using their service becomes a shared memory across an entire generation. Beneath the family-friendly surface, though, was a business model built on friction. Blockbuster made money renting movies, but a remarkable share of its profit came from a single, quietly resented source: late fees. When you kept a tape past its due date, the charges added up, and for the company those penalties became a major revenue stream. Customers grumbled about them constantly. The phrase itself became shorthand for a small, avoidable frustration. Yet from the company's point of view, late fees were enormously lucrative, a river of money flowing in from forgetful renters. It was a strange foundation for a beloved brand, profiting most when its customers felt they had failed. That tension between what people loved about Blockbuster and what actually paid its bills would sit at the heart of the company's later struggles. The very thing that fattened its margins was also the thing customers most wanted to escape. At its peak, Blockbuster looked untouchable. It was the dominant force in home entertainment rental, a giant valued in the billions, with a footprint that stretched across continents and a brand recognized almost everywhere. Hollywood studios courted it, because a prominent placement on its shelves could shape a film's fortunes. The company had leverage, scale, and a seemingly bottomless supply of foot traffic. Millions of households held a membership card, and the blue and yellow logo was as familiar as any fast food sign. In the world of physical media, it had effectively won. But dominance in one era can become a trap in the next. The company's entire structure, its real estate, its staffing, its economics, was optimized for a single way of delivering movies: a customer driving to a store, choosing a tape, and driving back to return it. That model had made it enormous. It also made it heavy and slow to turn. While Blockbuster ruled the stores, a very different idea was taking shape. Around the turn of the millennium, a young company called Netflix was experimenting with a novel model: DVDs mailed to your door in red envelopes, with no due dates and no late fees. The DVD, small and light, was perfect for postage in a way the bulky VHS tape never was. Netflix was tiny, unprofitable, and fragile, burning cash as it tried to build a subscriber base. Its founders knew that a company with Blockbuster's reach could crush them, or, better, absorb them. So, in a moment that has since become legend in business history, Netflix's leadership traveled to Blockbuster's headquarters with a proposal. They offered to sell the company, to hand over their fledgling mail-order operation and their expertise, for a sum widely reported at around $50 million. It was, in hindsight, one of the great crossroads in corporate history. The meeting did not go the way the future would have wanted. As the story has been widely retold, Blockbuster's leadership was unpersuaded, viewing the small mail-order outfit as a niche business chasing a niche of movie enthusiasts. Why pay for a money-losing startup when you dominated the entire industry with thousands of stores and a trusted brand? From inside the giant, the logic seemed sound. Blockbuster's whole empire, its revenue, its late fees, its real estate, its relationships with studios, was built around people physically visiting locations. A service designed to keep customers home and to remove the very penalties that padded the bottom line looked less like an opportunity than a threat to everything that worked. So the offer was declined. Netflix walked out without a deal, and Blockbuster returned to running the business it knew. It is easy to mock that decision now, but at the time it reflected genuine confidence. The world Blockbuster knew, however, was already shifting beneath its feet. Broadband internet was spreading into homes, mailboxes were becoming a viable delivery channel for movies, and the idea of waiting nothing and paying no penalty was quietly reshaping what customers expected. Netflix, freed from any deal, kept growing, adding subscribers who loved never having to drive anywhere or worry about a due date. Its subscription model was simple, and its promise was clean: no late fees, ever. That single feature struck directly at one of Blockbuster's most sensitive nerves. Meanwhile, the technology curve kept bending. What began as DVDs in envelopes would, in time, point towards something even more disruptive: movies delivered instantly over the internet, with no disc and no mailbox at all. Blockbuster still had the stores, the brand, and the customers, but the ground rules of the entire business were being rewritten by companies it had dismissed. Eventually, the giant did stir. Recognizing that customers were slipping away, Blockbuster launched its own online rental service and a program often marketed under the name Total Access, which cleverly blended mail delivery with the physical stores. Under it, subscribers could return a mailed movie to a local Blockbuster and walk out with another in hand, a hybrid that Netflix, with no stores of its own, simply could not match. For a moment, it worked. The service gained real traction and genuinely rattled its rival, proving that Blockbuster's vast physical network could be an asset rather than only a burden. The company had, at last, found a weapon that played to its unique strengths. But mounting the counterattack was expensive, and it arrived years after the threat first appeared. What could have been a decisive early move had instead become a costly game of catch-up, launched by a company already carrying the weight of its own sprawling empire. Around the same time, Blockbuster made another dramatic move. It went to war against its own most notorious feature. In a bid to win back goodwill, the company announced it was ending late fees, the very penalties that had generated so much of its profit for so long. Customers cheered the change, and on paper it addressed one of the loudest complaints about the brand. But removing that revenue stream punched a serious hole in the company's finances, and the rollout was messy, with confusion over new policies and hidden charges that frustrated the very people it was meant to please. It was a wrenching decision. To survive, Blockbuster had to dismantle one of the pillars that had made it rich. The move showed the company understood what customers wanted, yet it also revealed how trapped it was, forced to destroy its own profitable habits just to keep pace with nimbler competitors. Behind the scenes, a quieter drama was unfolding. The company's balance sheet was buckling. Years of aggressive expansion, corporate restructuring, and changes in ownership had left Blockbuster carrying a heavy load of debt. Thousands of physical stores meant thousands of leases, staff, utility bills, and inventory, an enormous fixed cost that had to be fed whether or not customers walked through the doors. As foot traffic softened and competitors offered cheaper, more convenient alternatives, that vast physical footprint turned from a moat into an anchor. Every store that once symbolized dominance now represented an obligation. The company had also spent heavily fighting on multiple fronts at once, subsidizing its online push while slashing the late fees that had padded its margins. The math grew unforgiving. A business built for a world of driving to the store was now paying the price of that world's slow disappearance, and the interest payments kept coming due. The disruption also kept accelerating past whatever Blockbuster could reach. Just as mail-order DVDs had undercut the store model, streaming began to undercut the disc entirely. Netflix pivoted toward delivering movies and shows directly over the internet. No envelope, no waiting, no drive, and other technology companies pushed into digital delivery too. Video on demand through cable boxes, downloads, and rental kiosks stationed outside grocery stores all chipped away at the reasons to visit a rental shop. The convenience gap widened into a chasm. Why get in the car at all when the movie could simply appear on your screen? Blockbuster experimented with digital options and kiosks of its own, but each attempt was reactive, launched into markets that rivals had already staked out. The company was perpetually one step behind a technology curve that only steepened, and its greatest strength, all those physical stores, mattered less with every passing month. The closures began, first as a trickle, then as a flood. Underperforming stores were shuttered, their inventory liquidated in fluorescent-lit going-out-of-business sales, where the once proud new release walls were marked down to almost nothing. Bright yellow clearance signs replaced the promotional posters, and the crowds that came now were bargain hunters picking over the remains. Neighborhood by neighborhood, the familiar blue and yellow storefronts went dark, their signs removed or left to fade. What had been a fixture of the weekend routine simply vanished from one shopping center after another. Employees who had worked the counters found the doors locked for good. For customers, the disappearances were a strange, gradual loss, the slow retreat of something they had assumed would always be there. Each closed store was a small monument to a way of life that was ending, and there were, in the end, a great many of them. By 2010, the pressure had become unbearable. Weighed down by debt it could no longer service, and revenues that kept sliding, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy protection. It was a staggering fall for a company that, only a decade earlier, had stood as the undisputed king of home entertainment. The filing set in motion a painful process of reorganization, asset sales, and yet more store closures, as the company tried to salvage something from the wreckage. Its remaining assets were eventually acquired by the satellite television provider Dish Network, which hoped to find some value in the once mighty brand. But there was no reviving the empire. The forces that had undone it, streaming, subscriptions, the death of the disc, were only growing stronger. The bankruptcy was less a single catastrophe than the formal acknowledgement of a defeat that had been unfolding, store by store and quarter by quarter, for years. In the years that followed, the surviving stores winked out one by one. Franchises that had hung on independently finally closed their doors, and the number of Blockbuster locations dwindled from thousands to hundreds, then to mere dozens, then to a handful. Each closure made a small news story, a nostalgic obituary for a piece of the past. People shared memories online of Friday nights and clamshell cases, and the particular thrill of finding the last copy of a new release. The brand that had once seemed permanent became a symbol of everything the internet